anything. The plan for this week, change it a bit. Initially, I was planning the Chapter 9 and 10 quiz today, but I'm pushing that off until Friday. All right, so the quiz, there is a quiz coming on Friday. It's going to be over Chapter 9, 10, and 11. Quiz on this Friday. And we're going to be assigning or determining team members on Wednesday for your major project. So think about, I'll give you a chance. If you want specific people on your team, go ahead and we'll talk about who you, if you have a team that you'd like to be, we'll just make that list. Otherwise, I'll have a random put your name in, and we'll just randomly assign team members. So either way, there'll be 2 to 3 on a team, not more than 3. Not more than 3. But it will be a team project, and you can next week then on Monday and Wednesday, that will be time for you finishing or working together as a team. Since it may be a little difficult to find time outside of class, next week, Monday and Wednesday, will be you can work with your team to finish things up. But that doesn't mean that's the only time you do the work on that project, because it's not going to be a small project. The project, I think I made it visible in the course, so you're welcome to read through that. I'm not going to discuss a whole lot of that today, although I am going to be requiring GUI components, graphical user interface components, on that project. That's the same thing. Yeah, the major project. I just put the word team in there just to remind you that's a team project. So, but there will be a regular Chapter 6 homework exercise, which is also visible right now. And that's the part I'll be going over. And if you notice, if you want to take a look at that Chapter 6 homework exercise, there is an array component in there just to give you more practice with arrays as we build them into our projects. Just because we start with arrays, and I want to make sure you get some practice and work on that. So we can discuss more of that today and Wednesday, and then any other questions you may have. Okay, so by Wednesday, next class time, we'll decide who's on what team. If you have a team, you can just let me know. Otherwise, I'll have your name on a piece of paper. We'll just pick them out of a cup. Today and Wednesday, talking about graphical user interfaces. Yeah, so that's major team project number 1. Okay, so getting right into graphical user interface, this is Chapter 6. I'm kind of going through that in the order that they're giving in Chapter 6. Using graphical interfaces, Eclipse has made some parts very easy to do, but it'll make us lazy. So before we use Eclipse's tools and graphical design, we're going to build our GUIs from scratch, right from code, so we understand what's going into it. Okay? So let's go see some GUI action here. I'm going to start a new project, and it's going to be my GUI from scratch project. And I'm saving these other ones that I was practicing with just to make sure I didn't miss anything. And I'm going to close all my extra windows here. Not too many windows open. My Windows 10 laptop crashed the first time last night. So until then, Windows 10 had not crashed on me. But I was working away, watching a video about adding Windows components, and got the blue screen. Okay, so start a new project, and what we want to do is make sure that you have the components you need to actually build a GUI. So I'm going to do new project, Java project. I'm going to give it the name having to do with Chapter 6. I'll call it Manning Chapter 06. I'll call it Practice GUI. And there's my little project right there. Make sure to have that select. Occasionally, when if I have multiple projects showing up, if I don't have it select, or if I have another one selected and I wasn't paying attention, I do a new class and it's added to a different project. So make sure you have your project selected when you do new class. And this is going to be our main class. So I like to give it the name main. I'm going to call it my main GUI class. Oh no, I'll just call it main GUI. And I am going to put a static main in there. We're going to find out that Eclipse really doesn't demand that you have a static main. That when you first run it, if you don't have one, it just says, well, it asks you what component should I run first. But we'll be using a static main for now, as we practice building GUI components as our program runs. Okay, so start a project like this. I'll be coming around to check that you can get this far, because I don't want to go without you having been able to do all of this. And make sure that your environment on your computer is doing and has all the components needed. Because occasionally you run into little Eclipse problems, and I don't want you being stuck with that. So with GUIs, with graphical user interfaces, I'm going to zoom in here a little bit, make that a little more readable to you. We can do some simple things like just display some dialog boxes. And they do that at the start, just showing you that in a graphic program, if I want to just display a dialog, I can do this thing called Option Pane. And I can create I don't even have to create a variable. I can just say Option Pane, capital J, capital O, and capital P. And I can just do a show message. We're gonna do a show input dialog. We're gonna ask for input. So I can do show input dialog with simply a string as a message. So I can let Eclipse help me with the autocomplete and type in a message that I want them to see as I'm asking for input. So I'm going to ask for something like give me the width, and I'm just going to say width ? Now that's going to return a string, so I better do something with the output that it gives me. So I'm going to assign the output that it returns to a string. So I'm going to say string width str, I'll use capital S, equals what that option pane returns to me. I could call it without doing anything with the output, but then I'm just asking for an integer and never storing what they tell me. Let's see what happens when I run this code now, letting Eclipse or letting Java handle my input. I did not get any error on call to Option Pane. I do have a warning. I haven't done anything with width string, so it's saying, hey, you have an unused local variable. We're going to be using it later, so we'll ignore that warning. Now if I run this, I get a lovely little dialog, a GUI built for me, with me not doing any work at all except say start a Option Pane and ask for input. Before the windowing and the GUI components were well established in your programming environment, we had to get a window like this to come up. It took 3 days of programming because we had nothing to build on. Now they give you the window, and all you got to do is say, give me a Option Pane. Question? Not mine, but you may have to.
Yeah, it says
right, and then go ahead and see if you can get the import to happen. This is the part that I want to be sure can happen on yours. Okay, now that's happened to me too. That didn't even. Let's see if it even showed an import up above. I was expecting to see red squigglies, and I'm going to cancel that input, and let's see what goes on up above here. Let's expand that. Yeah, see, where is it? Why is it not letting me slide up to line 1? Ah, I don't know why it doesn't let me go up to line 1. Crazy. irritating. Now, if it does ask for it, if it does the import for you, then does it run? Okay, that's the important thing there, that you have your it knows what a J option pane is, and that is part of Swing. That is Swing. You can think of Swing as all the graphical components. There's more than Swing. There's other graphical components that, if you get into the details, one may be more efficient, one may have more features than another. But we're going to go with Swing just because it's the easiest one to use. But Swing is not the only graphical component. So this lets us pop up a dialog. Now to do something with that width, like put it in a double, I can do something like this. I can say double, I'll call W for the width, equals double dot, what was it, get parse double, and then take that width string and now I can do something with it, like system.out.println you entered, and then tell them what double they gave me. What, not the word double, W. Okay, so that will then tell them, okay, I'm just verifying this is what you typed. Let's run this in a few times just to test what can happen when I ask for them to type a double. I then do a parse of the string they gave me, and then tell them, okay, just to verify, yes, you entered, this is what I expect to see. So I'm going to run this now. It's asking for a double. Didn't say it's a double, it's just asking for a width. Remember, what I type in, it treats as a string. So let's just enter a number, 12.34. I think enter, oh, I guess, yeah, it's enter, and then sees you entered 12.34. Oh, it's working. It converted it to a double. Let's do that again. This time, I'm going to say, you know, I don't really want to enter a double right now. Let's just hit enter. Oh, look at that. I got a red generated. I generated an error, an empty string. What should I do in case they enter an empty string? What could I do for any kind of error checking here? What did we learn last week? Yeah, we can put that in a try catch. Notice it didn't say I had to. Sometimes it will force you, like when you're opening a file, it will say, hey, this will throw a file exception. In this case, in case they return me something that cannot be parsed, this is the part that gave me the error. So I could do a check, say if width string has a length, or I could just do a try. Let's try the parse. And if it doesn't work, I like to do it this way, catch. And I'm going to do the global exception E. I don't care what particular exception. If I get any kind of exception, I'm going to catch it and just say W equals, how about 10? If I can't parse what they give me, I'll take a default value of 10. I could do more like putting it in a loop until they've given me a proper value. But I'm going to just say, if I have any error parsing, just to practice a little bit of our error handling skills. So here's what, remember what I'm doing. Oh, I got a problem here. See, I've declared W up here within the try. If I want to be able to access it from inside the catch, I have to declare W outside of the try catch and assign it here. Yeah. Otherwise, I'm going to get an error. Wait a minute, I only know about W inside of this scope. You can't access W from outside of those curly braces. So if I'm not sure what W might get as I try to parse, I have to put this all within a try-catch, declaring W outside the scope of the try-catch. Now this is just a little practice at just getting started with GUI. This J option pane lets me fire up a little GUI component that will ask me for some kind of input. Now I can do that same thing. Let's get a height, and then we'll display an area of our rectangle. So let's go ahead, and I'm just going to copy that code, and I'm going to ask for a length. So instead of width string, I'm going to change that to length string. Change that to L, and L now equals the default value. If they've given me if I've got a bad value, if I wasn't able to parse it, and instead of width here, I'll ask for length. And I better parse the length string and not the width string. The danger of copy pasting code is you don't update all the pieces. Alright, so I'm getting a length string this time. Same kind of question. Declaring my length L variable, parsing what they typed, and if they had any trouble parsing, giving it a default value of 10. So width, default, length, and width of 10. And this time I'll enter, you enter W, comma, plus L. And then I'll do some calculation. Forgot a plus there. Separated by a comma. Let's just fire this off and see that it works. Enter a width. Let's enter a width of 1000. Enter a length. We'll get a length of 23. And I get you entered 1023. This is what I consider basic testing code. Verifies that what I entered showed up in the variables. Doing more with the code, like calculating area, that would then be further calculation. So the whole point here is I can fire off a J option pane, already built-in GUI. I don't have to do anything. When I get that J option pane, it already has a nice little format of a box, a window with a question mark. Automatically puts the string that I said put to display above a text box for me to type into. Has a built-in OK or cancel button. Now, in the try catch, I don't know. There may be a way for me, if it returns nothing, how do I know if I click cancel or OK and left it blank? That'll be something that I have to handle from what I get back in the string. And that I have to read the documentation of what does it return if I leave it blank? What does it return if I click cancel? How will I know? Because if they click cancel, I might want to do something different than if they just were lazy or hit enter before they hit OK before they type something. Now, if I were building this GUI, the J option dialog, I would not let the OK button be clickable unless they type something. Because it doesn't make sense to hit OK and not have typed something. You can cancel and not have typed something. But this is what they've built for us. We want to build our own J option dialog. That's something we're going to learn in this chapter. So the J option pane tells Java, open up a window, and look, it has various effects. It has a little drop shadow around it, has a grayed area, has a title bar, all built in for us when all I ask for is a J option pane. Now we're going to get a little fancier. J option panes are nice for simple ask for an input in a graphical way instead of asking it at a console, because who uses consoles anymore? That's just old school. We want to bring up the graphical ask for input. But we want to do something fancier than just asking for option panes. We want to do something that our program can actually create its own user interface and have a whole dialog like you would see on a web page, multiple inputs and text boxes they can enter values. Or even more exciting, I can have graphical objects that move around and animate on my screen. It may be a little paddle on one side and a little ball that bounces back and forth to the other side. We can build animated games. We can control that now if we build our own user interface. And here's all that we need to do to build our user interface. Instead of just making it a plain class here, I can add to my program class, I can call it, or I can type here, extends JFrame, capital J, capital F. When I extend JFrame, now my program can have all the vast capabilities of a JFrame, which is the basic object letting me do graphical drawing on my window. Now I am getting the red squigglies for this one, so I have to hover over that and import JFrame. This time is from the Java X Swing library, and now I have the capabilities of a JFrame. And let's see what I can do now with the JFrame. One thing I want to do in a JFrame, in order for it to be visible, I have to, first of all, create this an item of this object type, and then set it visible. Let's see what happens down here. Before I have those dialog boxes, I'm just going to go comment those out for now, since that was just practice, but I don't want to forget about it. I'm going to turn that all into multi-line comment all the way to the end of what you entered. Oh, and there's comments in between. I thought that went. There. Turn all that into a multi-line comment, and I'll remind myself this is the end of main. Okay, so I'm going to put extra lines here before I end my main. This here I've just all commented out. That was just some practice. I know I'm a JFrame, and I'm a class. Main GUI is the name of my class. So let's just try this. JFrame my main equals new. What kind of class am I? Main GUI. And one thing I can do with a JFrame is I can do my main dot set visible and set that parameter to be true. Let's see what happens if I simply create my main GUI JFrame, which is an extension of JFrame, and let's just set it to be visible. Let's see what happens. So 2 lines. I'm creating an instance of my class called main GUI, and I'm just saying set visible true. I run, and oh, look here, I get a tiny little box show up. Now let's see what I can do with that little box. I can grab a corner of it and resize it. I can move it around. That's my program doing nothing but showing visible. It's sizable. I have an X, a minimize, and a restore down, and I have a cute little icon, the default Java icon. This is a JFrame with hardly any information in it, but it is visible. So without doing anything more than set a frame to be visible, I have a gray box that I can resize and move around the screen and draw, can't quite draw any graphics in. It takes a little more work to be able to draw some graphics inside of there. But this is showing me that Eclipse lets me draw JFrames, and I'm ready to now do something fancier with it. I want to tell it how wide it is rather than having show up as a 0 width, 0 height little JFrame, and that's as small as it gets, but it is sizable. And if I click the X, I think it actually does not end my program. If I come over here, oh, I guess it did end it. I was expecting it not to be ending. Now let's do something a little bit more exciting. In our constructor for my main GUI now, yeah, in the run stop, which I don't, oh, there it is. So yes, I see the dialog run stop is still red, meaning my program really hasn't stopped. it's hanging out there somewhere, and I was expecting to see it here on my taskbar with a little Java icon, but I can click stop just to make sure. Now it definitely is terminated. So the GUI went away, but now I made sure my program is stopped. Now here's the more exciting things I can do now. In the constructor of my GUI, I'm going to add a few things. So let's go up here and actually make the constructor of our class main GUI. Right now, since we didn't define our constructor, what's our constructor? It's the parents constructor that's being used. So a JFrame, because it extends JFrame, it's a subclass of JFrame. Now I can make my own constructor, public main GUI. I have to use the name of my class to make the constructor. And I'll put a little comment here, constructor. No params constructor. You can have multiple constructors. We'll just do the one very much like they did in the book, where we're not asking for anything but make this GUI. Now here's the things that I can do inside of a JFrame constructor that makes sense for establishing a decent looking GUI. And I like to use the word, well, I can use the this dot construct to let Eclipse give me all the clues of what can be done in a JFrame. And look at this huge list of methods available as soon as I make myself a JFrame. I don't know if that's a couple hundred or if that's just about 50. Quite a list. We're only going to use a few of them, but you are welcome to explore all the methods. And you see there's lots of gets, and there's going to be lots of sets. Typical class has gobs of gets and sets as they get more complex. And the part of that we're going to use is we're going to do this dot set title. Set title is a nice thing. Oh, set title. And the string I'm going to give it is, let's call it, yeah, put your name in there. Manning JFrame. Put your name in there for the title, and we'll see how that shows up. Next thing we're going to do is, remember how it came up a tiny little box? We can do this dot set size, and it takes a width and a height. So you can decide what width and height. In the book they use 400, 300. I'm going to use 300, 200. I like, no, not string. Sorry, not a string. It's a number, 300, and a height, 200. Make it as big or as small as you like. Remember, it is sizable, so it will still be adjustable. And you can actually tell it whether it's even sizable. And remember how when I click the X, it really didn't close the program? So we're going to do this dot set default close operation. And you can see a list that pops up is all the various things that I can decide to do when I close the window. And way down here, towards, well, not towards the bottom, just a little ways down, exit on close. So when we close the button, when we click the close that window, we're going to click exit. And let's see, it has a question mark there. If I click on that, does it tell me anything? I was thinking help might pop up. No, it didn't. So exit on close is the action we're going to take when they close that window. And one more thing I'm going to do, when I create it, I need to set myself to be set. I need to be set visible. Oh, actually, I already am setting myself to be visible down here when I called it. This isn't needed anymore if I decide when you create me, I'm going to set myself to be visible. There's a lot more things than these 4 items that can be called when I create a JFrame. Let's find out how this behaves now. And then we'll get on to actually putting things graphically up in that dialog, in the graphical user interface. So I'm setting a title. We'll see what happens. I'm setting a size. Notice I'm not setting a location. I think I can actually tell it where it appears in my desktop, but that would require me to know how large my desktop is. We'll just go with what it decides to set it in its location. All right, run. Look at it. It looks like the default location is up in the upper left corner. Graphically, that's known as 0, 0. Y increases as I come down my screen, even though mathematically we're used to this being 0, 0 down here. Upper left is 0, 0 in graphics world. So I can move that around, see my set title manning JFrame. I see when I set the title, that's what appears on my little title bar. The size, but I can always still adjust the size, but it starts at a 300 by 200, not a 0 size box. It looks like the gray part is what is actually the content of my window. And let's see, if I see the little square, I see the little red stop button is there. If I close this, let's see if that red stop button goes away. That'll indicate to me it really has terminated. I close the window, yes, and I can see, and I also see in the console the program has terminated. So this 4 simple commands is giving me a taste now of what I can do with JFrames, opening the world of graphics to my program, where before it was all text-based, console-based, enter things at the command line. Those are pretty powerful programs. Nice thing about those is they don't require my user interface to be working. I can connect remotely to my computer, get terminal commands, and do some powerful things without having to figure out how to display the desktop. And so system administrators, you want to know more than how to handle console-based programs. Okay, so now let's make this a little more exciting. We want to actually create some objects that get shown inside of that window now, like little buttons that I can push. Well, that takes a little bit more work, and what we need to do is we need to create a thing called a content pane. So let's go back down to here where we have our main. I can comment this out because it's already making itself visible when I have the when I instantiate it, when I create that variable. But now we need to make I'll put it in here, add graphical components. Well, how do I do that? Well, first, the rule is I need to have some way of accessing the contents of that JFrame. And here's how it's done. I have to declare a container. And we'll just call it my pane. Not, my pane. And I'm going to have it to be equal to my main dot get content pane. Get content pane. This gives me a handle to the container where I can now place graphical objects. And I come over here and I see I need to do an import of the definition of a container. So I need a container in order to put things into the frame. I need a handle to the content pane of the JFrame that I created. So what this is telling me is my main is a JFrame. It's been instantiated and given a title because of the constructor. But in order to draw anything in it, I need to get access to its content pane. And now I have access to it, and we're calling it my pane. Some people call that the panel. Some people call that the pane. All right, now I can now start adding graphical components to that. And there's a whole list of graphical components. The simplest one is a label. Let's make a label now. We're building our own little dialog. And a label is called a JLabel. We'll call this label 1, LBL1. Start using more common terms you'll find. LBL for label equals new JLabel. And the JLabel will have a component. Let's have this one say, hello world. One of the favorite JLabels to display. And of course I need to import the definition of what a JLabel is. Now let's see if they're showing up at the top. Those are showing up, and now I can see line 1 of my program. Now I've created a label, but I have to put it in my container. So although the label is there ready to be added, what I have to do now is do my pane dot add LBL1. That adds that label to the pane. I have a label created, but I haven't told it where to be displayed. At this point, my label gets added to my pane. So my pane.add adds that label. And I think at this point, we're ready to actually run and see if that hello world message appears. We don't know where it's going to appear. I haven't told it anything about location. Let's just find out where it decides to put it. And it looks like it decides to put it left aligned right vertically in the middle of my new JFrame. So there's what a label looks like without me saying anything about what that label's font color is. It chooses some kind of font and a font size. I have more control of that in the LBL1 multiple methods. So there's me creating a label by hand. Let's add another thing. Let's add, how about this? We've added labels, but we want to see. Let's just find out. Let's see if we add another label. We'll try to add the length, width, and then we'll display area and perimeter. Say we're doing that rectangle application. Let's see. If I want another width, let's see, J label. Let's call it LBL width. This is where I'm going to be telling them in the dialog, I'm expecting the width here. So we'll make that equals new J label width. And this time, it's a little more professional. I'll put width colon. And then I'm going to be putting a text box for them to enter values in. And before I doing all the ads, I'll do all my ads at once. Let's have another label, J label LBL height. Another new J label. And of course, they're not being displayed yet. Let's find out what happens if I just add these. My pane dot add LBL width. My pane dot add LBL height. Again, not telling it where to put it, hoping that by just telling me to add it, it will somehow know to arrange them nicely. Let's see what happens and see how that pane arranges them. I run, and oh man, what's happening here? All I have is the height one. It looks like it keeps piling them right on top of each other in the same place. Man, that's not going to work. I'm going to have to fix something. Well, this is where this concept of what do they call it? Layout manager. I have to, in order to have it not all pile everything all in the same spot. Essentially, what it's doing is all those graphical elements are all being piled up on top of each other, and the last one put in there is what's showing. That's not going to work. I need to have some way of, when I tell it to add a label, it should know to maybe put it down on the next line. Well, in order for that to work, I have to tell this pane what kind of arrangement of things I want to have. So before I start adding things, I'm going to go back to here. After I created that pane, I need to tell my pane something about how it should arrange things as I'm adding them to them. And here's the easy way to do this. It's built in my pane dot set layout. Set layout is telling it how to arrange things on that frame as I add things to it. Layout managers are probably the most confusing part of the graphical interface at this level. We're going to just go with the simple layout manager that's called grid layout. So here's the line. We're not going to go do research into this whole grid layout. There's other layout managers. You're welcome to do the research. But for now, we'll just go with what they say as here's a simple way to get it to arrange things. It's called a grid layout. And the parameters to grid layout are the number of rows and the number of columns in an invisible grid that as I add components, they'll automatically get added to the next thing in the grid. And of course, it doesn't know what a grid layout is until I do the import of grid layout. Now, without changing anything else, just telling it, here's your arrangement of things to put as I add components. Let's see how it behaves now. Now as I add labels, it automatically adds them to the next thing in the grid rather than piling them all on top of one another. This is the behavior of the grid layout. Now, I'm not quite happy yet. I'd rather have these labels right aligned, but we'll deal with that as we refine our application. I have told it grid layout 4, 2. So I know the next thing I add will go here. So let's go ahead and add a label that will basically display our answer or our area. Oh, and I'm gonna stop the program by clicking the X. I could just as well terminate it clicking on the square box. But just to confirm, it still is exiting on close. I'll add another label, JLabel. I'll call it LBL area equals new JLabel. And it's just going to display, this will be the answer, the area that I'm going to calculate for them. Yeah. All right, let's go debug a little bit here. So, was it showing up before? Yeah.
I had the same problem happen on my solver by taking that stuff out of Constructor, putting an app install elements.
Really? Ah. There may be a way to get it to refresh. Let's address that problem. This comes up a lot when you're drawing graphics. Think, hey, wait a minute, I just added something. Why isn't it showing up? I think you can do this. Let's try this. I don't know if I have to do my pane or my main. Let's do it to my main. My main dot invalidate. Basically, the invalidate means make the window redraw itself. Tell it, hey, maybe some things over. And another way you'll see this, say you run, you can debug this when you're running and you're seeing things that don't show up. But if you put it behind another window and then come back, if they show up now, that means, oh, I need to force the window to redraw itself. So putting that in there, putting the main.invalidate, my main window invalidated, basically you're telling the graphics, hey, redraw yourself just to make sure you all show up. As we do animation and drawing lines and things, this gets to be useful. But remember, you are forcing all the graphics to redraw. If there's anything complex you're drawing, it may slow down your program. But this is an easy way to check, oh, maybe remember how you saw it. I set visible first, but then they didn't reshow. This might fix it. Yeah. Right there. So I had a set visible in there, but like you're seeing that sometimes as you're doing graphics, at this point whatever's in it gets visible. Not always guaranteed that it'll behave nicely. Like you're seeing, half the time they were showing up. This is I'll call it this kind of the lazy way of making sure all the graphics get redrawn. So I'll leave that at the bottom after I draw my graphics. Now notice I haven't yet added my label area. Let's add that. My pane dot add and LBL area. Now you see, as we're adding more and more things, you can start thinking, wait, maybe if I just put all my labels in an array, I could have a little loop here adding all my labels just by one, my pane.add through my labels in my array of labels. So as we get more complex, like a display of a chessboard, rather than doing 64 my labels.add, or there'll be other rectangles, I'll be looping through displaying things in my panel, in my pane. Now we've added the labels. Now we want to get input from the user. Remember how that dialog had a place for them to enter text. So the next thing we want to learn about is text field. So JText field, and I'll call it TXT. Let's see, where they're going to enter their width. I'll call it TXT width. And guess what I'm going to call it? Make this new JText field. And JText fields don't have any text to display. It's just an empty box, so I don't think I need to give it any kind of string. And of course, it needs to import the definition of a text field. Let's go ahead and make 3 more, or 2 more. Actually, just 1 more, because the others are going to be display of the answer. JText field txt height equals new JText field. Let's see if this grid is working the way that I expect. I'm hoping the next 2 things that get added will get added to the next column over. So myPane.add txt width and myPane.add txt height. Let's see if it actually works that way. Oh man, it didn't. What did I do wrong? I was expecting them to be added in that format. So I'm going to have to fix what's going on here. I thought that would fix it. Let's see, what did I miss? In the books example, they waited to set visible all the way to the end. They added the first 4. What did I do wrong here? Debug time here. One, 2, 3, 4. No, I guess I'm not sure. I thought they were expecting. Let's see if I debug this. Is it entering them left to right? When the first time I did it, it was entering them up and down. Let's take these away and do this again. I'm gonna take away these 2 adds and run this again. So if I don't have more than 4, it puts them in this order. Now that I have more, I guess I just have to reorder how I add them to my pane. When I do this, see the order that they come in. Oh, did I not run it? Maybe the invalidate isn't doing what I expected. My text fields aren't showing up. Maybe that invalidate isn't the right answer. See, my text fields aren't even visible. Maybe I have to do my pane invalidate. Let me try that. Otherwise, let's see if that does anything. Okay, so it's behaving inconsistently. Maybe I can't do a set visible until I've added them all. I'm not sure why. I was hoping this would fix the appearance. Well, in the book they didn't do a set visible till the end. I'll get this debugged and show you the answer by then. See if you can figure that out. That's what happens with graphics. Actually, I wanted it to go to the right of it. So it showed up once. Now they're not even showing up. So
For mine, I don't know if it's just because I'm on Mac, but when I right when I run it, it's just blue screen. But if I expand it, it'll pop up.
oh,
So maybe that.
let's try that with mine.
I don't know why, but every time I run mine, it changes point. When I resize it, it'll pop up.
Look at that. We'll solve that problem. That has to do with something about the order that I'm adding things. And that's what you deal with graphics. You have to do things in the right order. All right, so Wednesday we'll be talking about that team project some more and assigning team members. Have a great day. Opening up the world of graphics to you. Oh, better stop the recording here. Thank you.